Welcome back to Petrol Poodle, where we are finally reviewing a car in 2022. It's been a little bit manic and, well, let's get started. Quite exciting. Oh, for shit. It's a Honda Civic. Sorry about that. Skip. Go to another video. I've done a lot more fun things, F-types, very, very rare hot hatches. Don't bother with this, just go. Well, okay, that is the bad news. It is a bronze Honda Civic, but it's obviously here for a reason. I do think it has earned its place on the channel. The good news is I was actually after a cheap daily that I was quite happy for it to be a bit dull, quite happy for it to be unremarkable, and it just needed to get the job done. And this car has actually genuinely wowed me and impressed everyone else who, just like you, was at first a shrug about it. Once you take a look around and appreciate the little bits of Honda genius, it's actually a car that's worth considering. Now that that kind of honeymoon bias is gone and I've had this car for 8 months, what do I actually think of it, and which variant of this car, if any, are right for you? Okay, so funnily enough, I normally like to start with the interior because it kind of leaves the best till last of when we're going to do the drive in a bit. But actually, with this car, really I think the most exciting thing about this car is the interior experience. I still remember how futuristic this thing was when it first came out. It was such a bold design to go this futuristic. And I'm going to pop a few other things on screen right now just to remind you what everything else looked like at the time. Now, those of you who might not be too into your cars and here for reasons to see if should this car be for you, it might stagger you to realise this came out 17 years ago. I mean, 2005 for anyone watching it in a few years' time, which is absolutely bonkers. It just really doesn't feel like it. And okay, let's say aesthetically it's not to your liking, and okay, you can get heated seats and other gubbins in other cars. So what does make this interior experience any good? Well, for me, it's the Honda logic. There's something here where I think, why have more cars not played things out like this? So you've got these multiple screens on different layers, but they put the most useful information, only the speed and little eco meter up there at the top, right below your line of sight. It's amazing how useful that actually is. And when you hop in another car without it, it actually feels weird. It feels illogical. This one down here that has your rev counter and a few other bits, again, it's super simple. You can see everything you need. It's a very high quality display, and even to this day, it's higher quality than a lot of modern cars coming out. When you're parking and you're reversing, you can see the little kind of distance. It's got tire pressure monitoring. Oh, it lets you see who's wearing a seatbelt in the back and who needs to turn it on. Great if you're a parent and you've got a little young'un back there or whatever. Over here on the left, you've actually got your climate controls and your clock and, you know, radio info. That's surprisingly useful as well, because you don't think about it, but in a lot of cars they put the climate control right down here, so you're driving along and you have to take your eyes right off the road to play around with what you want to do. Now, this whole spaceship design, everyone knows this Honda as the spaceship Honda, and I love the fun here. They've really put all the controls right, they surround you here. Just a quick glance down, you've got your heating bits over here. You never really touch that crap, to be honest, and then you've got your radio there. It all does make sense. It's pretty logical. So down here you've got your cup holders and you've got a little central divider which actually slides. What a great touch. Really useful because every cup and every bottle is a slightly different size. Another Honda design touch that I love, the climate controls for the passenger are actually on the door by the window switch, so they can just sit there and turn the heating up and down just for their side. Onto the spec. So in this instance, I've got the EX trim, and the name changes around 2011 when they do a facelift. But really, this is the trim that I'm going to recommend to nearly everybody. The reason is it doesn't really cost much more than the others, pretty much at all, but you do tend to get all of the toys. So heated seats, auto lights, auto dimming mirror, auto wipers if I haven't said those, dual zone climate control, cruise control, rear parking sensors, electric double blinds here for the panoramic glass roof as well, and you get the full leather seats as well on the inside, and that does make a big difference. Okay, the back. Let's be quick with the back. This is always the boring bit, unless you're a dogger. This is really relevant to you. Plenty of knee room. I'm 6 foot, sat behind me at 6 foot, and loads of room. Great. Nice and airy in here, doesn't feel too claustrophobic, and really, once I lean back here, that's where my head touches the roof. So maybe not great there, but if you slightly slump, fantastic. But the front and the clever Honda design, that's why we're actually here. These seats are called Honda's Magic Seats. They move the fuel tank and they actually put it under the front 2 seats to make space for this. So you drop this, and down here, I don't know if you can see in shot, the seats will actually drop down. Now you get a pretty flat, if not almost perfectly flat loading bay. I managed to get a huge set of drawers in here, and that made a big difference. With ease, you can lift these up and leave that like that. I actually find this personally useful just for cleaning out the car and vacuuming all this. It's so much easier than having seats in the way. If you've had one of these cars and you've had a good use for having these vertical seats, put that in the comments because I'd be quite curious. Okay, it's slightly hard to actually convey just how massive this boot is, but I have got a few old shots which might give you an idea. But one of the little Honda touches of design that I really like, when you lift up this floor down here, there's actually no spare wheel, so you've got another whole section, so you can store a lot of things that don't really rattle around the boot. Your power outlet there for your 12 volt. There's actually a digital tyre inflator hidden in this little compartment around here. Anyway, finally, let's get on to see how she drives. All right, so onto the driving segment. Now, before we get started on how it actually feels, we've not gone through what this has actually cost yet. I still can't believe this. So, genuinely not joking here, non-car friend of mine thought that this was brand new, so they would have thought about 25 grand. A friend of mine who does know his cars but isn't really into them, he guessed £10,000 when I told him one owner, full history, 75,000 miles. And I had another friend who's really quite into his cars but hasn't really looked at a Civic before. He thought this car was £8,000. With COVID pricing and with the fact that I paid for the auto, which is more than the manual, I got this one for £4,500, which I still can't believe it because it just feels like I spent so much more money on this. Now, the funny thing is, if you're in the Civic community, no matter what you spend, everyone goes, bloody hell, mate, you spent too much on that. Oh, you spent way too much. You've been ripped off. Because all these people seem to remember when you could pick these up for a bag of chips. Anyway, this is because I've got the facelift, which came out in 2009, and they did make a few improvements here and there to both interior and exterior, and a lot of it's more harder wearing. How does this thing drive? Now, if you've done any research and now you've come here to kind of back up the idea that you should get a Civic, one of the first things you'll notice is that the journalists have said that this thing has got a really firm ride. I did buy this car thinking, okay, it is firm, but it's not that bad, but it is firm, because I kept reading what these journalists were telling me. And then when I've actually taken out people in the car, girlfriend, mum with a bad back, and I said, just kind of like for the review, what did you think of it? Did you think it was firm or a bit crashy? No, everybody thinks it's absolutely fine. So if you haven't been told by a journalist to look out for a firm ride, it doesn't really seem to enter the minds of most people, at least in this kind of EX guys anyway. One quick note, since recording this, I did actually drive an Audi A5 for 3 or 4 days on much better roads, and that was a very good reminder of what really plush suspension can feel like. So if you're coming from a high-end German car, it is one thing to consider. What's even funnier is that I didn't know that I was driving around on 2 smashed rear shock absorbers. Since having those fixed, it's actually quite a nice ride. Now, part of the payoff of having such a kind of a firm car, which it is firm, but it's not uncomfortable, is that it actually handles really well. This has got the least body roll of any car I think I've owned, and I've had lots of fast cars, which is quite funny. It just feels very, very planted, and even on a B road or an A road going quite quickly, you go into a bend and it just holds itself really nicely. It doesn't wallow around like a giant boat. The only time I would really say think about it carefully is if you live in a part of the countryside where you've got appalling roads and that's going to be the majority of your driving, take one out for a test drive. But I've done multiple 6-7 hour drives in this car and got in comfortably, and I get out feeling great. The next thing that stands out is actually the steering. It's not amazing, but I actually do think it's very good steering, and I've had other people say when after they've driven it, oh, I like the steering on that. So it is noteworthy. The 1.8 petrol is what I've got here. It's the automatic gearbox. 140 horsepower. It's actually plenty enough. Like, I can overtake something which is getting in the way and winding me up. It's got enough power on the motorway. It never feels lethargic and sluggish under your foot. It drives nicely. Fuel economy is pretty good actually. I can get 53 on a really good run. That's kind of holding in a 50 average speed zone on a motorway for a while. But realistically, 45 mpg on the motorway, and stop, start, hills everywhere. Averages, I kind of get like 37 by the end of it all. Real star. Woo! Go on, buddy! The real star of the show is the 2.2 diesel. And sorry to annoy people here, or at the risk of annoying people, I don't really suggest diesels anymore because of the day and the age that we're in, and the fact that everywhere's trying to phase them out, and the diesel's getting so expensive as well. So that engine is undeniably brilliant. It is a better engine than the petrol. Fact, it's seriously impressive. It's really torquey. You can get crazy miles per gallon. Some people have shown 70 odds, high 60s on the motorway. There are some people who've got them to 300,000 miles. You know, these are the ones you can pick up for 1,800 quid with top spec everything if you want to go for the first gen of this. So, you know, make up your mind there. Onto the gearbox. This is something that actually they often kind of make an engine feel sluggish. There's something about them which I find doesn't always really work. But this is a really good auto. This is a really good auto in the facelift. A very good auto indeed. It's kind of intelligent. It makes the right call. I never sat there going, no, down a gear, what are you doing? Or come on, let's go up a gear now, you're wasting fuel. It's actually very good. Do not confuse this with the I-Shift. Now, I don't think I've ever known a gearbox to get so much hate in all of everything. Those who've got the hang of it, you can find YouTube reviews, and there's some people that love it. So I'm not just going to tell you they're crap. I wouldn't recommend them. Take one for a drive. You might enjoy it. They're not particularly popular, and Honda got rid of them in 2009. So the manuals are probably a very good shout. They'll be cheaper to buy. If you enjoy sport to drive, they're a little bit more involving. But for me, as I've got a second car that is my fun weekend sports car, I want this to be an auto. I want it. It's part of the experience for me. It's just relaxing and unwinding in this. These are very reliable cars, and you look at the owners and they're saying, God, I used to have this, I used to have that, and they just kept costing me so much money. I've had this thing and it's been bulletproof. However, this isn't the most bulletproof Honda ever made. It's not that you can't just expect nothing. They are very, very good overall. The things that matter are very strong. The engines and gearboxes are all great, etc. If you have the diesel, the clutches are known to go a lot with those. I know the early diesels had a few issues as well, but generally a petrol one of these should treat you pretty well. Oh, one more quick thing on the engines. You get a 1.4 petrol. Do check that out if you're a brand new driver. Personally, I'd go for the 1.8 if you're coming at this a bit later in life. It doesn't make any difference. They're very, very well built, but there's one common design flaw, and that is that you get a swimming pool in the boot. It seems to be, in some people's eyes, inevitable. Past a certain age or mileage or something, there's a few seals around the car where they start to let a tiny bit of water in. When you pull the rear right seatbelt out, the seatbelt is slightly damp. That's the worst I've had, and we found a tiny hole in that seal up there. So that's been plugged in. I haven't really had any issues since. There are horror stories of people having put seal in 20 different places, and they've ripped all the interior and the boot lining out, and they've had to spend a couple of days dicking around. Do see if you can find out if that's been done, or take a look yourself in certain places and see if it looks like there's some new silicone in there. Some people seem to believe that it's inevitable that your aircon's going to go and that you're going to have a bit of time trying to getting that to work again. So far, at 82,000 miles, everything's been fine for me. Right, time to conclude. Should you buy one of these? And if not, what else should you be considering? What's the closest competitor to this? Well, to find a reliable, kitted out car like this, as practical as this, that can do so many things, that's the hard thing. You can find a lot of cars for not much money that have the spec sheets, but those are the cars that are going to cost you quite a lot to run, that are going to hit you with those surprise bills. I'm looking at you, older German cars. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So this is the number one choice for me, but there are other things to consider. One, if you want something that feels a little bit more kind of driver involved and focused, then funnily enough, a Mazda 6, if you want to go for that kind of DILF in a hurry vibe. Mazda 6 Sport from 2010, 2012, have a look into one of those. If you need a bit more space, a little bit more practicality, well, actually the Skoda Superb and the Skoda Octavia, they are brilliant cars. Yes, I know I just said old German and someone's going to be going, oh yeah, they're the badge group, they're actually old German. Well, they are, and so they're not perfect, but somehow Skoda seem to just put them together in a way, using maybe the kind of simpler of the Vag tech. They just do seem to work. So look at one of those. Otherwise, for me, it's actually got to be, if you've got the higher end of the Honda Civic budget, go for the next one if you can. I actually would say just stretch if you can to a higher mileage next gen one. You've got better suspension, you've got the reverse camera, you've got the sat nav, you've got Bluetooth, you've got premium sound system, nice amp, decent speakers all around, a sub actually built into the boot, and as I said, most importantly, better ride quality. So do have a little look at those if you can stretch to them. But this for me has been the start of a show I didn't actually think I was even going to be watching. It was just supposed to be a car from getting A to B, doing the sensible stuff, and I've actually really loved it. I've got a real soft spot for this. So do let me know what your little favourite car has been. What's been your favourite sensible daily? Have you had one of these? What do you love? And yeah, please do like and subscribe. It makes a massive difference. I can't believe I'm still here making videos. It's great fun. So yeah, thanks very much, and see you on the next one. Bye.